Southsider Studios is now on Stitcher. Listen to us on your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, and WebOS phones. Stitcher is smart radio for your smartphone. Find it in an app store or at Stitcher.com. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Hi, this is Jason Danitz from Second String Spandex, and you're listening to the Southsider Studios podcasting system. For more great podcast programming, visit SouthsiderStudios.com or search Southsider Studios on iTunes.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Hello, Cinesmack peers, and welcome back to Cinesmack. I am your host, Mike Keeler, and joining me, as usual, owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom Haggis.
Hey, Thumbsuckers, what's going on?
And also owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabe Rowald.
Where are my pills? I need my pills.
You do. Owner of Outpost 515 Productions, Mr. Sam Twomey.
What's up, all you Chumscrubber thumbsuckers?
That sounds very aggressive.
I know, I'm sorry. Sorry to start off. Awesome.
And our special guest for tonight, owner of Root Productions, Nick Root.
How's it hanging, everybody?
Hey, Nick, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and kick it off. I am going to poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, debaters and kidnappers, welcome to the main event. In the first corner, from 2005, directed by Ari Posen. Or maybe it's Ari Posey. Or maybe it's Oliver Popsicle. I don't know, but he directed this thing. Starring Jamie Bell, Camila Bell, and Justin Chatwin, Chumscrubber. In the second corner, from 2005, directed by Mike Mills. Isn't that the guy from R.E.M.? Anyway, starring Lou Taylor Pucci, Tilda Swinton, and Vincent D'Onofrio. Thumbsucker!
Let's go ahead, and I'm glad I don't have to say these names close together because I would get so tongue-tied trying to say them. Let's go ahead, and we'll start off with writing, and we'll pass it over to Sam.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to look at these movies for this bout. Like, you know, a lot of times we always throw out ideas of movies. This is one that I suggested from the very beginning because I think they're both of these films have something different to contribute to the overall film dialogue. And also, I don't think many people have seen them, or as many as I would love to have seen them. Writing, for me, they both of these scripts take much different directions. Chumscrubber is very it's kind of scattered. As an overall, I think the script for Thumbsucker is much tighter. It gives you a much more insight into the characters. I feel like Chumscrubber, a lot of times there was kind of a shallowness. It played with the overall structure because it was supposed to be kind of surreal and whatnot, but sometimes that just left you with empty characters, and even the best cast in the world, which we'll talk about in acting, can't necessarily give that more depth if it's not written there and implied there in the screenplay. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy both of them for lots of different elements. I like the commentary in both different ways about dealing with the issue of prescription drugs and our children and what our children are on. Obviously, there are much different takes on that, but I think after rewatching both of them, I would probably say that my vote is going to go to Thumbsucker. It's just has a better flow to it, and I think there's just more meat there for the characters, which makes for a better film.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Gabe. You're up, Gabe.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I was muted.
I was like, oh, I lost Gabe.
No, I'm still here.
All right.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to disagree with Sam. I felt like, for me personally, the writing in Chumscrubber was stronger, and in part because I feel. I suppose I should start by saying that I don't know if I felt either of them was really super strong, but I think I enjoyed Chumscrubber better from a writing standpoint. The characters, while they may have been shallow in certain instances, I think that was intentional because they weren't really characters per se. In my mind, they were more caricatures. They were representations of types of people, and I just felt like the story. I was more compelled by the story in Chum. I'm gonna abbreviate these, Chum and Thumb, which isn't gonna help any, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I felt like the story was more compelling in Chum because I was engaged immediately when he went to his friend's house and his friend, spoiler alert, he found his friend, had committed suicide. Mm-hmm. Immediately, I was like, okay, I want to know what led to this. I want to know how these people are going to react to this. And then they introduced all these other characters, and I didn't know where the story was going to go. And I kept on. I kept on wondering, are they really going to try to kill this kid that they kidnapped? Is he really going to get the drugs for them? And so I felt like the writing was a little bit stronger, and it pulled me through the movie more than Thumbsucker. I found that Thumbsucker was kind of slow, and I just wasn't as engaged in the characters. And that might come into the acting part a little bit too. Because some of the acting may have pulled me out of those characters, in particular Keanu Reeves. I like Keanu Reeves in a certain way, but he's always the same character, and so we'll get into that in the acting part of it. And so I think maybe that didn't help. But I think for my money, Chumscrubber was more compelling from a writing standpoint, and I was more interested in what these characters were doing and what was going to happen to them.
All right. Thanks, Gabe. Mr. Tom.
I'm going to kind of agree with Gabe and Sam, but it was really hard for me to get involved in either of these movies. I think I'm hitting a point now where my kids, and my oldest kid is 6, is actually closer in age to the kids in these movies than I am. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to relate, sadly, more with the parents in these movies than the kids. And as screwed up as the parents are, it was hard for me to not take these kids and just shake them and be like, you're a fucking teenager. None of this shit matters. And it's so hard for me to get dragged down in the minutia of being a teenager now that I'm 36 years old and I've basically lived 18 to 18 twice. And I just, and so the writing for me, it was just, coming of age movies are nothing that I'm not a fan of them really at all. There's a couple that I really, really like, but the ones that I really like, honestly, I haven't seen in several years. I'd probably go back and see them. I probably wouldn't like them as much. So I have to pick one that I liked more than the other. I'll probably give it to Thumbsucker because I thought it's a much sweeter script, and it had a little bit more of more focus in the story that it was trying to tell. Mm-hmm. Chumscrubber, and I'm going to get into this into acting. I think all three of us have said that so far, but was a little bit all over the place. But and I thought Thumbsucker was a little bit more driven. Still, the plot meandered quite a bit, but I'd give my vote to Thumbsucker.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Nick.
All right. Well, these two films, it's interesting because they're both written and directed by not the same two people, but the writer is the director and so forth. Mm-hmm. Mike Mills and Ari Posehn. But The thing I liked about Chumscrubber is it gets you into the main plot right away, but it leaves so many questions that you're left wanting to keep on watching. And the only thing that I had was the whole Chumscrubber part of it, the video game. I wasn't sure if it was just, there to incorporate his dead friend or if it was like a metaphor for something. And that's kind of the only issue I had with that. As far as Thumbsucker goes, you get a great sense of family dynamics with the writing. It's more of a coming-of-age story and self-discovery. But it was just kind of boring to me. I mean, the whole Thumbsucker concept, you get into it in the beginning of the movie and then it just goes away. So I'm kind of half and half between these two, but I think I'm going to have to give it to Chumscrubber.
All right. Thank you, Nick. There is not a lot of trivia about these two films. So for Thumbsucker, the director saw over 100 actors for the role of Justin. And in Chumscrubber, the movie stars both Jamie Bell and Lou Taylor Pucci. Am I saying his name right?
Pucci.
Thank you, Sam. Who were both featured in music videos by Green Day from the American Idiot album. Bell appears in Wake Me Up When September Ends, and Pucci appears in Jesus of Suburbia as Saint Jimmy.
Sam should know that.
I thought I should. I actually just found that fact out a couple days ago online myself.
You are the biggest Green Day fan I know, and I expected you to know that. So I got to tell you something, Sam. You're fired.
But not because of that.
No, numerous other reasons, but
yes.
This is the final draw. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll move on to acting. And I believe Gabe starts us off.
All right. Well, yeah, the acting category is interesting. I think there's pretty strong acting in both of these films, actually. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a part of me that kind of likes Keanu Reeves, but there's another part of me that just like, he's the same person. He's the same character in everything he's in. And I don't know if it's just his natural delivery. He just has this... the only movie that I felt was perfect for him was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, because he comes across as this kind of like stoner kid, and every movie ever since. I mean, The Matrix, and this one, Thumbsucker, he came across as that same kind of, and in part it was the character, but I also felt like it was just Keanu Reeves. It's like he's not anything different. There's something about the delivery of his lines, and that pulls me out of those films so many times. I'm like, it's just Keanu Reeves, he's just kind of this, whoa, dude, kind of delivery on everything, and it just makes me feel like he's not really acting. He's just reading the lines as Keanu Reeves on the screen. So that to me was disappointing. And I like the Pucci. I like him, and I thought he was much stronger in Thumbsucker, mostly because he had a lot more to work with. I enjoyed him in both films, and I thought he did a good job. But I think I was most impressed with Jamie Bell. I thought he did a really great job in Chumscrubber, and I felt like the cast in Chumscrubber was really strong. I like people, I like Glenn Close, I like Ray Fiennes. I just feel like that whole cast did a really good job. And there's one part in particular that stood out to me as a part that I was really engaged in and that I thought was really satisfying and was well acted. It was the part where Dean, Jamie Bell's character, comes to Glenn Close's character, Carrie, his friend Troy's mom, and they're at the memorial service, and he tells her about her own son, and it was just so well done and so satisfying that I was totally engaged in the film at that point, and I totally forgot they were acting, and I was like, that was really well done. So I think overall, from individual performances and an ensemble, I think Chumscrubber's my choice.
right. Thank you, Gabe. Let's move on to Tom.
Those are some good points there, Gabe. Or at least I think they were. I wasn't listening.
I know this.
Well, I just turned my mic down. Anyway, no. In all honesty, yeah, you had some really, really good points. I thought the ensembles, the cast of actors that they brought together for these two films was really impressive for the size of the films that they were, and the subject matter, and the fact that the two movies came out 3 months apart, 2 months apart. I don't know if they were competing for this, drugs in prescription drugs and youth message that they're both kind of trying to deliver. But I think that the cast of Chumscrubber, I think, did a better job. And I did not think that until the very end of the movie, because the fact of I was watching it and I felt that the entire movie was very disjointed, that there were these scenes going on and none of the actors really knew what was going on in the other scenes and how they were intertwined and everything else. And that all of the scenes almost kind of felt like this collection of short scenes for young actors. And it wasn't until the very end of the movie when they do the whole the flyaway shot, and you look down and you see the entire development that they live in the shape of the dolphin, that I'm like, oh, that's the point, is that they don't realize that they're part of this bigger thing. And the actors were able to kind of, embrace that and work that into their performances. And I thought it was really quite striking. I don't really recall a movie where that theme carried through to individual performances inside the movie, and I thought that was really, really awesome. So I'm going to give my vote to Chumscrubber for that, not to take away from Thumbsucker. Thumbsucker really kind of came across more as wow, I didn't realize that Benjamin Bratt and Vince D'Onofrio and Vince Vaughn could act that well, because all three of them did a really, really great job and exceeded my expectations. And, Tilda Swinton is awesome in everything she does. She goes out to get the mail and she gets an Oscar. So I'm going to give it to Chumscrubber, because I thought just the overall drive of how they were able to deliver on that theme of the parts of the whole being greater than the sum of their parts. So I'll give my vote to Chumscrubber.
All right, thanks, Tom. Nick.
Okay, so we'll talk about Thumbsucker first. Hi, my name is Keanu Reeves, playing Ted, playing the one, playing some dentist dude. That's pretty much how I saw that, and I cannot take Vince Vaughn seriously as anything besides a party or whatever comedy movies you've seen him in. So I couldn't believe him at all, especially when he gives like the alcohol to the kids. I'm just sitting here thinking, in what real world scenario does that actually happen? And leaving a boy with three women in the same hotel room, just totally, I did not understand that. And I mean, both these pieces are ensemble pieces. If the whole entire cast doesn't come together to act the film right, then it just falls apart. And for me, Tilda Swinton did great. Joe Pucci's great. Kelly Garner's awesome. But, the fact that there are some stray people in there that just made it fall apart for me. Chumscrubber, on the other hand, phenomenal cast. So many people in this movie. I wrote them all down. I was like, oh my god, it's got Allison Janney, Ray Fiennes, Rita Wilson, Carrie-Anne Moss, Glenn Close. The only person in this film that I cannot stand is Justin Chatwin, who plays that jerk of a guy. And it's not because... It's because he's a horrible actor. I can't say. Every time he was on screen, so when he gets his eye slit at the end, I was like, thank God. But I know I'm a horrible person, but it's just the whole cast working together on Chumscrubber I thought was awesome, and so it definitely goes to Chumscrubber for me.
All right, thank you, Nick. Sam.
Well, I think you guys have all made good points, and Nick, I totally agree with you. Justin Chatwin, I hated him in that movie. The rest of the cast is so just amazing to watch these smaller performances from them, and he's just I love it when he gets sliced in the eye, and it's coming because they build it up I've got 20/20 vision, that's my meal ticket kind of thing. But great performances in Chumscrubber. Like Jamie Bell is amazing. It's been interesting to see him continue to evolve in his career since Billy Elliot, and he's done some really good work in things like Jumper and a few other films. But I thought this was a great lead for him. He did have some very emotional moments, as Gabe had pointed out. Mm-hmm. I can't fault the acting in either film, actually, because the cast worked, and I think, and Nick kind of said it, if they don't work together, then the film could fall apart. And I didn't think that as much in Thumbsucker as Nick had pointed out. I did like Vince Vaughn. I agree with Tom in some ways that there's some really strong performances there, and I think Vincent D'Onofrio in Thumbsucker is just amazing, and Tilda Swinton put with Pucci, and I think Lou Pucci does a tremendous job in that film, and I don't think he's been able to kind of recapture some of that magic in some of his other work, but to me, it's really tough to look at the acting there, but it's the strongest point, mm-hmm. I think, of both of these films, and what I think is endearing about them that makes me want to suggest them to people, because neither of them are perfect, but it's a great kind of examination of getting these great casts together and shooting an amazing film, on a fairly smaller budget. But acting-wise, to me, it's got to go to Thumbsucker. It has to go to Thumbsucker. I think it's Pucci, Swinton, and Vincent D'Onofrio. To me, Vincent D'Onofrio, I can't say enough good things about him. It was so measured. It was so layered of a performance from him. And, he's I've always thought he's a very talented actor. I think he really turns it on here and kind of brings it home for Thumbsucker.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Chumscrubber, one of the two movies released in 2005 that starred Glenn Close, Jason Isaacs, and William Fichtner as part of the ensemble casting. The other film was 9 Lives. I don't even think I've ever heard of 9 Lives. Have you guys? Did any of you see 9 Lives?
Sounds somewhat familiar, but I can't recall it.
It's a terrific cat food.
Okay. Keanu Reeves and Tilda Swinton also star in Constantine, which also came out in 2005.
Which is also a horrible movie.
I just know it's based off a DC comic, but it was bad. And Keanu Reeves was playing Keanu Reeves. But anyway.
Whoa.
Well, one quick point on Keanu Reeves saying is, like, I was watching the movies both of them with my fiance, and he hates Keanu Reeves, and to me, I thought it was high praise when he said that Keanu Reeves didn't suck as bad as he thought he would. But it does kind of go with him. I think everybody touched on it. Like, he is just that same character.
Yeah, you gotta take him when you can get him, I guess, right? Okay, let's move on to directing. Tom, you start us off.
This is the hardest one for me. I going back to the Chumscrubber thing, I really like the way that, as I mentioned, the way that the cast is kind of brought together under the umbrella of this idea of life in suburbia. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I thought that Mike Mills handled the actors in Thumbsucker a lot better. So what I feel like I'm voting against here is the technical abilities in Chumscrubber. I'm sorry, I already got them freaking mixed up. The ability in Chumscrubber to get the most out of his actors, whereas in Thumbsucker, I thought his technical abilities in terms of composition and shot choice in order to drive the story forward was a lot better. So I'm kind of looking at an actor's director and versus a technical director, and both of them did those things really, really well. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding. I have a blank spot on my little sheet here where I'm supposed to pick who I think is going to take this one because I just haven't decided yet. But I'm probably going to give it to I am definitely going to give it to Thumbsucker because it's those directing choices in terms of using the camera in a way that, like I said, helps drive the story forward. And I think Mike Mills did that in such a great way. This is not a story that I would be particularly interested in, but it was his direction that really kept me engaged in the story. And there was nothing really fancy, but I like a director that's not afraid to stick a camera 12 inches, 6 inches from an actor's face to really capture the emotion and get those really great performances as close as you can. I imagine seeing Thumbsucker on a big screen in a movie theater would have actually been really, really moving because of his really, really great direction. So I've ran out of reallys, so I'm going to just say Thumbsucker for direction, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Tom.
Really?
All right.
Really.
Thank you, Tom.
Not really.
Nick, go ahead.
This one was a tough one for me, since I want to be a director too, and so I nitpick at every little thing that I see on the screen. When it comes to Chumscrubber, for the most part, the directing was good. I mean, you already heard me talk about the acting, but I went more technical with these categories. Ari Poston doesn't really do a whole lot of big stuff in the movie. It's very basic choices as far as editing goes, and shot-wise, over the shoulders, simple dolly shots, tracking shots. He doesn't go do anything crazy. There's no crazy editing that happens, so it was just very simple, and he played it safe. On the other hand, Mike Mills does the total opposite. He, and that's not to say it's a bad thing. There were a lot of really cool shots. I remember one that kind of irked me just because of how slow it went, and it's the slowest pan ever. It's one of those where you have two over the shoulder shots, and you know how the character's on the right side of the screen, the other one the character's on the left side of the screen. And what they do is they do the dolly to go from one side behind the person's head to change the views, so that one person that was on the right is now on the left, and that's to indicate a change in like the story or tone or mood or something like that. And the only reason that it kind of irked me a little bit was because I was looking at a head for like 5 seconds, like a blurry head as it was doing it. And but other than that, there was some great stuff in there. The debate scene I thought was really awesome. The way it was cut and edited together. And I really thought it was interesting how he didn't use a lot of over-the-shoulder shots, actually. He did more of like a panning of back and forth between the characters, and it kind of kept you... It was almost like you were a viewer in the story as opposed to just somebody watching it. And I think I'm going to give it to Thumbsucker on this one.
All right.
Just because of that.
All right. So. Thanks, Nick. Gabe. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah. Actually, I think according to our schedule, Sam's.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. Sam, go ahead. Thank you, Sam. Gabe.
Yep. All right, then.
Sorry, I didn't take my pills. Sorry.
He's got ADHD. He can't pay attention. Oh my god.
Wow, that's so topical. I'll keep it pretty short. Like I think Tom and Nick have both raised excellent points about some of the work that these directors did. I think Mike Mills did a fantastic job, and I love the pacing and the way that he worked with an incredible cast. But for me, I'm going to give my directing category to Ari Poston for Chumscrubber. Early on, Nick had mentioned, which I also thought was interesting, that both of the directors are credited with the stories in the credits. So they both have a very unique stake in the story that they're telling. And I think, Ari Poston was maybe less experienced when he came into this job, but I think he did a fantastic job, took a lot of chances. And so I'm going to give my vote just for that initiative and the tremendous harmony of all of those stars together to Chumscrubber.
All right. Thank you, Sam. And now it's your turn, Gabe.
All right. Well, Yeah, I think both of these films were both competently directed. But at times I felt like both of them had pacing problems. There were times when I felt like it was kind of slow moving, and I kind of wanted something to happen. But I felt that more with Thumbsucker. I felt like I just felt like nothing's happening. It's just I wanted the pacing to be a little bit faster, move the story along a little bit more succinctly, and I felt that Chumscrubber did a better job of that. I was more engaged. I was the pauses in the story were meaningful to me. I was like, what's going to happen next? They're keeping that from me, and that's creating suspense, and I want to know what's happening.
Right.
So I felt like the pacing for Chumscrubber was better, and I also felt like I liked the cinematography in Chumscrubber better as well. I don't know what it was. It was just richer to me. Thumbsucker, and maybe decidedly so. There's no reason why these things can't be conscious choices, but I felt like it seemed a little bit less. It seemed lower budget from a cinematography, from a lighting standpoint. It was simpler. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just felt like the cinematography in Chumscrubber was stronger. And I think you can tell where I'm going with my vote. I think from a pacing standpoint, from a working with the actor standpoint, from a story standpoint, from an editing and cinematography standpoint, I enjoyed Chumscrubber better than Thumbsucker. So Chumscrubber gets my vote.
All right. Thank you, Gabe. Just since I've run out of trivia, I want to say one thing that Nick was talking about the over-the-shoulder shots. One thing I really liked in Thumbsucker was when Kelly Garner and Lou Pucci were talking, like after when he finds out that she didn't want to experiment with someone that could hurt her. Like when they were talking, he took the blindfold off. I really loved the shot over her head, kind of looking down at him. And I want to say it was over her head because I swear I could see the part in her hair, but it might have been off to her shoulder. But I really loved that shot. I thought it was really well done. I don't know if you guys remember which one I'm talking about.
I remember it.
I really dug that. And also, I really love the little brother in Thumbsucker. He just cracked me up. I dug it. But, all right, let's move on to our final category, which is overall. And Nick, you start us off.
It's funny that Gabe brought this up. I actually have it written down here in overall for Thumbsucker. It's the very first thing I wrote, and it says slow pace. So I found that interesting when he said that. I don't normally notice these things when I watch movies, but I wrote down muted color scheme, which I really liked. I thought it lent to the film of Thumbsucker. And then I also have power tie written down because he's wearing a power tie when he's doing his debates. But it has somewhat of a fragmented beginning, which I was put off by, and I kind of didn't get interested in the story up until it got towards the end, and then I really got invested in it. So it's one of those films that I think you kind of have to stay through. And I hate the soundtrack of Thumbsucker. I'm sorry, but all of the music in there was god-awful. It's horrible.
I thought it was reminiscent of Thomas Newman. Do you know how... I'm not talking about his brother.
I thought Thumbsucker was great, man. I think you're...
Sorry, I couldn't get with the music. I don't know why. As far as Chumscrubber goes, I don't know why I wrote it down for the first time, because it's totally not a good comparison, but I wrote down a better, darker Charlie Bartlett. And the only reason why is because of the drug comparison and the fact that Jamie is playing this kid who doesn't really get along with people at first. And that's the only reason why I wrote it. I think that Chumscrubber is a way better movie than Charlie Bartlett. But I think it definitely is not a movie for everyone, but I do think that the writer-director combo works. I didn't really write much in the overall category, but I think combining everything, writing, acting, directing, I'm going to give it to Chumscrubber.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Sam.
Well, I've always liked both of these films, and I think on rewatching them as we do for CineSmack, you kind of get you come at it with a new angle. Mm-hmm. For me, in the overall, what I like about Thumbsucker, in some ways, maybe something that our fellow panelists don't like. I think the pacing and some of that pacing kind of has its hills and its valleys, much like the drugs that the character is on. Some people say maybe you shouldn't attribute that and it's just poor pacing, but I think it's purposeful in the way that it's done, and you kind of get lulled into the story, much like the character is. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed Chumscrubber. It takes a lot of chances. Both of these movies do. And I hope people, if they haven't seen them after hearing about it, that they check them out, because they're definitely worth a watch. But for me, after reviewing them again, there's just something about Thumbsucker that has the rewatchability factor that we inevitably talk about. I enjoyed the score. I love both the cast of both of the films, but for me, it just really works in Thumbsucker and brings out some performances from some actors that we haven't seen in a lot of films. So I'm going to give my vote to Thumbsucker.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Gabe.
Yeah. It's interesting how similar these movies are thematically. And it makes me wonder, and I don't have any experience with this. I don't have any children, and so I don't know what they're going through. But it is an interesting look at what modern children are facing, mm-hmm. and how they cope with it. And through Thumbsucker, it was interesting. He went through several stages of coping with his life, and each one of them, in a certain sense, was a kind of addiction. It was something that he relied on to cope. So sucking his thumb was the first thing, and it seemed like a fairly harmless addiction. But when that was taken away from him through hypnosis, he couldn't cope with it. And then he got into a lot of trouble. And of course, there was the inevitable ADHD diagnosis and the instantaneous prescription drug solution to that, which seemed on the surface to improve his life and his attitude. Mm-hmm. But then everyone around him became jealous and brought him down. And then he decided to give that up because he didn't want to deal with that. So then he turns to pot. And then eventually he kind of escapes all of that. I think. To me, the ending was a little bit unclear as to what was going on. What happened? Did he escape? And why was he running through the streets of New York at the end? Was that a symbol of freedom? Or was it a symbol of his escape? I'm not quite sure what that meant. And the same goes with Chumscrubber. It's interesting to me how children's coping mechanisms are portrayed nowadays. That they cope through drugs or of one kind or another. Oftentimes they're prescribed by people they trust, and other times they're drugs that they latch onto socially. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder, is it really like this for so many young people? And I was surprised at how thematically similar they were. But I felt like Chumscrubber. It's weird to me also that Chumscrubber is kind of billed as a dark comedy, and I don't know that I've seen a lot of dark comedies, but I didn't laugh very much. So it wasn't comedic in that sense. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe in a certain way they bill it that way so that they can kind of overdo these characters. They can over amplify these characters' traits, and so they, each one of these characters is really just kind of over the top in a certain sense. They're, like I said earlier, they're more caricatures than they are characters. They're not nuanced. They're over the top, and maybe they bill it as kind of a dark comedy so they can kind of get away with that. So we can kind of laugh at this exaggeration of these traits. But I wonder if young people really have to deal with those kinds of personalities in their real lives. People who are so focused in their own lives that they just forget that there are young people to be, that need attention and need help getting through this life. And I just felt like Chumscrubber approached that a little bit more, even though it was a comedy, supposedly. It approached it a little more realistically and a little bit more seriously to me, and got to the point more quickly. So I think as far as a more believable, more realistic portrayal of what these young people are going through, I felt like I identified with Chumscrubber a little bit more. So Chumscrubber gets my vote in the overall.
All right, thank you, Gabe. Tom.
Okay. Gabe, I thought it was funny that Gabe said that the more realistic one is the stabbing, kidnapping teenagers one.
Yeah, I know.
The quiet
ones that are
teenagers
caricatures.
Yeah.
Who sucks their thumb anymore, really?
And I would say that, the Thumbsucker has some really great realistic points to it. And, everybody, and I think both movies kind of address this, that everybody kind of has their thumb, their security blanket, so to speak. It can be, drugs or alcohol or a significant other, just that safe place that people go to. And both films kind of address that in one way or another. I really like Chumscrubber in the point that, and I didn't mention this during the directing, but the way that Ari positioned the camera on the adults, so that it was just above eye level, as if you were looking down on the adults as if they were children. And then in scenes with the teenagers, he put the camera a lot lower, pointing up at them to make them, a little bit stronger and more dominant. It's very subtle, but it was a really nice touch. And I thought it was kind of a cool way to kind of juxtapose the adults are less mature than the teenagers. That being said, I think it's total bullshit that adults are less mature than teenagers. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, because I think teenagers are making huge mistakes and they're doing just dumb shit. And I'm not saying that adults are completely mature, but to say that, to generalize that the adults are the immature ones is absolutely ridiculous. And when my kids are teenagers, I'm going to be one of these parents in one of these movies that just doesn't get it, because my teenage years were nothing like any of these kids. It was very normal, and I got to, do fun stuff, but I also did my school stuff, and it wasn't kidnapping and thumbs. So
speak for yourself.
I want to vote for Thumbsucker because I thought that it was a more realistic portrayal. I'm sorry, Gabe, but I thought Thumbsucker was a more realistic portrayal of what it's like to be a teenager. And I'm not saying that teenagers suck their thumbs, but I think that the ebb and flow of being a teenager, that, when you're in the groove and everything's going your way, and, you can say whatever you want and do what you want, and you can manipulate adults. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself out of the loop and you're falling behind and things aren't going the way you thought they would. And whether that's driven by prescription drugs or just, your natural mojo, I thought Thumbsucker kind of encapsulated that a little bit better. On the other hand, I thought Chumscrubber was a much more entertaining film. Probably because I hadn't seen Chumscrubber yet, and I had seen Thumbsucker before. But I'm going to give my vote probably to Thumbsucker, because I thought it overall, aside from the music, I thought the music on Chumscrubber was way better. In fact, I'm going to look for that soundtrack because I thought it was so good. But I think I'm going to give my vote to Chumscrubber just because it was a little bit more realistic based, even though it was so real to the point that I didn't even really care about what was going on in these people's lives because it was so real. It was just, and I just didn't really. I mean, come on, seriously. In 3 years, none of these people are going to care about any of this crap that's going on. So that's my vote for Thumbsucker.
All right.
Apologies to everyone that I just offended.
That's fine. 'Cause for a second, I thought you said Chumscrubber in the mix of Thumbsucker, and I was like, wait, who's he voting for?
Thumbscrubber.
Thumbscrubber. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Chumsucker.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
any final thoughts, fellas?
Chumsucker.
I had
Thumbscrubber?
something to say, but I forgot it.
Going once, going twice.
Well, I felt like Tom made a good point that he felt like his teenage years didn't really resemble that at all, and I felt like mine didn't either. And maybe I was just naive, maybe I was innocent, maybe I was lucky. I don't know, but does anybody else?
If I were to be a character in Chumscrubber, I would probably be the kid that got kidnapped.
Right. You play the tuba, and
Because I'm a giant band nerd. No, I'm not a band nerd, actually. I played, when I was that kid's age, but...
Can you guys hear that? My computer is just freaking out on me. I'm sorry.
I can't hear it.
It's not coming through.
Okay.
I would like to say I would love to see a movie just about the Chumscrubber adult parents. Because they're so fucked up that watching their characters, I had more fun than watching the kids.
The Chumscrubber parents?
Yeah.
It's called Desperate Housewives.
So
Allison Janney though is just she's so much fun.
I love Allison Janney.
All of their performance were great. I thought
Sure.
they were all fun to watch. William Fichtner, he's great in everything. He's so awesome. I just,
I think if it goes back to the question of what was closer to growing up, to me I probably would say Thumbsucker. Like I could see those people at the debate club and he's kind of the cool guy that comes in and
she's the girl that you can't get over, but you still love her, even though she's a raging biatch.
Gabe, did you have a question? Were you asking us something?
Well, I was just wondering, if you guys felt like you identified with any of that stuff at all in your teenage years, or are we insulated a little bit? I don't know where everybody grew up, but I'm just going to make an assumption that we all kind of grew up in the Midwest, and maybe not. Sam, where did you grow up?
No, I grew up here.
Okay, because you lived in Florida for a while when you went to school, right?
Sure, but that was college.
Yeah, sure. Well, and I wonder if we're insulated from it, and I wonder if these things are more. Well, they portray these things as suburbia too, but I wonder if these things are more like big city related issues, or are we just really boring
Midwestern
kids? I don't know, because I'm sure there are some kids who went through some of these things, but I was fortunate. I had great parents. I had great friends.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, I had a lot of support. I didn't experience these things, so it's very foreign to me. And I didn't know if that's because of where we grew up or when we grew up. And I was just kind of interested in your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, I think these two movies just go to the extreme on certain levels. In order to make
Sure.
a compelling story, you sometimes have to go to the extremes. Just ask Michael Bay. I say that with a laugh, but
Transformers.
I'm just saying that. I don't think the average everyday kid has these experiences, but I think they do happen. I mean, I know kids that remind me a lot of Thumbsucker, and it's just it's not how do you put it? It's not the majority; it's the minority of teens that go through these things, and that's what kind of makes it a compelling story, because most everybody, just like us, just had an ordinary upbringing, I think.
I would have chuckled if they had put based on true story before the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's part of the fun that even if I didn't necessarily grow up that way, getting that window on the world of how maybe modern kids are growing up in a way, that's what drew me into those stories.
Okay.
But wasn't it's always like this? I mean, there's always Valley of the Dolls and Rebel Without a Cause, and they've always done movies about, you know, the troubled teen and their formative years and what kind of adults will they grow up into. And they've been doing this forever. And I went in and out of the teenage years and was like, okay, that was really oversold. I really, I wasn't kidnapped or stabbed once. I'm a little disappointed. So,
I mean, when I watch Chumscrubber and I see Jamie Bell's character, I think he's the most sane, normal person in that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, and you know, I do wonder about this medication type, this kind of medicated culture too, and that might be a little bit more of a modern issue, because I think a lot of these medications have appeared more recently. And to be honest with you, you know, I sometimes get frustrated going to the doctor just for simple things, because it's so like they don't really try to figure out what the problem is. They're just like, here, I'll give you a prescription and send you home.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I would prefer if we can, you know, maybe try to resolve this without a prescription right away, you know, if possible. And I do feel like maybe that is a little bit more of a modern problem than what we grew up with, especially for things that are more, you know, mental health related, or, you know, personality related and that kind of thing. Because, you know, what ADD is now is I'm thinking that's just kids.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, every kid within a certain age range
has that. Yeah.
The symptomology of ADHD.
Right.
None of them can sit still. I don't know a kid who's like, you know, 10 years old who can sit still and,
it's
the
part of
focus.
being a kid.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so, you know, I wonder if that's a little bit something that's a little bit different now than what we experience, because, you know, I don't know when did the diagnosis of ADD or ADHD, you know, come to popularity, and
as soon as
you
the
know,
drug companies figured out they could make a lot of money from it.
Right. Well, it makes you wonder about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you know,
I think it was late 90s, and that you know, both of these films in some way are commentary on that. And
absolutely.
You know, we didn't necessarily grow up having some of the same experiences in some ways, because they're, you know, as you were going to pointing out, you know, the diagnosis of this ADHD, and let's just medicate the problem.
Right. Instead of dealing with the problem, let's just medicate it.
Right.
Sure.
Instead of disciplining these children and teaching these children, it's a lot easier for them to pop pills than it is for us to actually, you know, teach them something.
Both movies leave the conversation pretty open-ended. Like, they're not decided one way or the other.
Right.
Saying, you know, they're starting that discussion, which I think works well for them, because they don't come off as preachy at all. They're basically just talking about what's very topical in 2005.
Right, and I do feel like that's the value of both of these films, is that it does bring up something that maybe older generations, people who are portrayed by the parents in these movies, don't really understand necessarily.
Right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we'll have you guys give your recommendations while I pull out my abacus. So let's start with the top again. Let's start with Sam.
All right. Well, keeping in the same vein of the independent 2005 movie, my pick is going to be Bubble, directed by Steven Soderbergh, done on digital cameras, lower end, unnamed actors, a really dramatic follow-up to the big Ocean's 11 movie. Basically, it's set against a backdrop of a small Midwestern town. There's a murder in the town, and you kind of focus on three people that work at this kind of creepy doll factory. It's a very interesting independent, and it's very telling of Steven Soderbergh, how he thinks as a director, being able to tell big stories with a much pared down crew, so to speak, and a much different approach, but equally engaging and dynamic. It's a great independent out of 2005. It's now streaming on Netflix, or you can get it sent to you as a DVD. You should check it out. It's called Bubble.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Gabe?
Well, I think I'm going to stick with the dystopic suburbia type theme, and go with a movie that I feel like approaches this very, very well. It's maybe a movie many people have seen, but if you haven't, I highly recommend you see American Beauty. I felt like there were certain aspects of the movies that we were talking about tonight that were very reminiscent to me American Beauty. Mm-hmm. And I only say that in that order because I saw American Beauty first. And it focuses on, what is a seemingly perfect suburban setting with seemingly perfect people and happy people. And you realize that there's really all this unhappiness underneath. And I think it approaches it in an entertaining and realistic way. And I enjoy it very much.
All right. Thank you, Gabe. Tom.
All right, I'm going to geek out, and I'm departing entirely from the themes that we talked about today and everything else. And I'm actually going to recommend a book because right now everybody's talking about.
That's awesome.
I know, but this is an awesome film book. It's everybody's talking about Star Wars right now, so I want to recommend Star Wars and History, edited by Nancy Reagan and Janice Lytle. It is a collection of essays that focuses basically on the influences of actual history, of global history on the Star Wars universe. And it's everywhere from, political movements and, famous people in history and how those people have influenced, characters and things that happen in Star Wars movies, down to architecture and costumes and everything else. And it does these really cool side-by-side comparisons. There's tons of pictures in there, historical photos, as long as, it's stills from the movie, of course, where you can see all of the inspiration for storylines and all of the more tangibles in the Star Wars universe and where it was pulled from in actual history. The teenage princesses and how they, were, influences on who Princess Leia was and where George Lucas got those ideas. So it is an amazing book. I'm partway through it right now, and I absolutely love it. It's just really, really insightful, and you really start to get more of the depth of Star Wars because if the Star Wars is ever accused of anything, it's not being deep enough. So and God knows, we get 7 or 8 new movies now. So before those movies come out, check out Star Wars and History. It's a great book. There's a Kindle edition and a other one. It's fantastic.
Cool. Thank you, Tom. Never had a book before.
You've never had a book? Oh, yeah. They're fun. They're like you open them up.
I usually use mine to keep me warm. They're Kindle.
I think that's a slanket.
Yeah. No, I'd say we've never had a book on the show before. Like,
yeah. I was trying to break new ground.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom.
Always next month, I'm going to recommend a sweatshirt.
Is it going to be from like Snorg Tees or something?
I think so. It might either that or threadless. I haven't decided yet. I've got my own 2 that I'm trying out at the same time right now.
All right, Nick. It's your turn. Damn it, Tom.
You okay there, Mike?
Not when I'm taking a drink.
Mike asked me to come on the show, and he told me I got to recommend a movie, and I'm like, holy crap. Being a filmmaker and loving film and movies and television shows and watching it constantly, this is the hardest thing to ever do. But in that vein, watching Chumscrubber and Thumbsucker, it really made me want to go back and watch this one movie that I'd seen before. It was also made in 2005. And it's from the director who did Looper, Rian Johnson, and it's called Brick. It's on Instant Queue on Netflix. It stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's got one of my favorite actresses, Nora Zehetner, who, if you've ever seen Everwood, she's on that show, and she's awesome. But it's basically about a teenager, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who navigates his high school their intense social network to discover a killer's identity after his secret crush is murdered. And it's really interesting, lots of twists and turns, and some really great acting, great tone. If you guys see Chumscrubber and Thumbsucker, definitely watch Brick as well, because it's a great movie.
All right. Thank you, Nick. I suppose you guys want to know who won, don't you?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right. Let me go ahead and poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Chumscrubber!
Yeah, this one was really close. It was one vote. Just decided the whole thing. So yeah. Now that I've said and enough, let's go on and tell people how they can find you, how they can follow you. Oh, wait, we have one more thing, don't we?
We do.
Tom, go ahead. I'll leave this up to you.
We want to announce that the winner of Tron on Blu-ray is Troy Dent, who entered actually 3 different ways. He shared the photo on Facebook. He got the all the answers right, and he submitted a guess. So that's probably how he did it, doing all 3. So so congratulations to Troy. And if people, I have him down as doing 2 of the 3 things, but whatever. I don't want Troy to call me up and be like, I didn't get them all right. So anyway, we're going to do the contest again. We have an awesome one that we're putting up on Facebook. You can check it out. It's 9 movie posters from 2005, the year that our movies today were released from. It's a really, really fun one. So there's, they're not, all the movies are 7 and 8 years old, so it's easy to remember them all. And this time around, you get 2 movies. You actually get Chumscrubber and Thumbsucker on DVD. So because neither of them are out on Blu-ray, so we're giving them both to you on DVD. Awesome. Whoever can win the contest this time around. So you get to have your own little Cinesmack in your room by yourself, which is what I do every night.
Yeah. You too? Oh, I thought I was the only one. Yeah.
So that's what they're calling it now.
Yes.
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go Cinesmack in the room. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Mom, close the door. I'm Cinesmacking.
I know what you're doing there, young man.
You better not be smacking cinema in there.
All right. Well, I just realized something. Apparently, I do need medication because I've been messing the show up enough. My recommendation is from 2002, and it's directed by Mark Romanek. And it's actually one of the first films I went to see at the newly reopened theater on Fleur Drive, which at that time was called Fleur Cinema and Cafe. Before that, it was a Cinemark theater. Wasn't it Cinemark, Sam? Sam's gone.
No, I'm not sure.
I believe it was one of those. It was one of the big chains, and then they turned it into an independent showcase theater. Every once in a while, they get some really great films in there, and we went and watched 1 Hour Photo, and I kind of wanted to stick with the independent vibe and also kind of the obsession vibe from this podcast. It stars Robin Williams, Connie Nielsen, and Michael Vartan. And I have to say, I was totally blown away. It could have been made just that much better because I was in this fantastic new theater and I had a beer in my hand, which I'd never done before in a theater. You know, I sat there and drank a beer and watched the film. But check out 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams. You guys will love it. All right. Now, let's move on to how people can get a hold of you, find you, follow you, track you down, watch you Cinesmack yourself in the back room. Let's start out with Sam.
You can definitely find me on Facebook, or you can check out information about the 48-Hour Film Project online at 48hourfilm.com/Des Moines. You can also contact me through that website.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Gabe?
Check me out on Facebook.
Okay. Tom?
You can look for Tom Haggis on Vimeo, Facebook, and Twitter. I'd be there.
You'll, from the sounds of it, be able to see some pictures of his brand new baby.
Yeah, I got a new baby on the way. She made it. Her water did not... Oh, God, I got to go.
Remember, you got to call us on Skype on the way there. And Nick?
You can also check me out on Facebook and my photography at Nick Root Photography on Facebook as well.
All right. Thanks, guys. You can follow me, Mike Keeler, on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter under Bullet. And
spelled with a V.
Yeah, it's spelled with a V. And it's Leet speak, man. And you can also follow the Southsider Studios page, which has a ton of other podcasts that you can listen to. Just search Southsider Studios. And, of course, we would appreciate it if you guys could leave us a review on iTunes. We need some reviews, guys. That's what helps us go up in the ratings on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use, I guess. But tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies, and make sure you guys leave us a review on iTunes. I would prefer it be good, but you can leave a bad one, too. It's still a review. And you can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. And for March, let me start that over. Take two. For our March bout, we step into the Wayback Machine with a Bruce Willis time paradox as we watch 12 Monkeys versus Looper. And right before... I got Mike some drugs. Thank you, Tom. Right before we started recording, we were just going off about these two films, and I think this one's going to be a good one. So for Gabe, Sam, Tom, Nick, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Well, I love that poochie.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.